Yes, a little bit longer title, but my presentation is about my PhD PhD research plan, and the title is How Autism Spectrum Disorder (ASD) is disseminated to non-Western countries. So it's kind of about globalization. But I know this is really broad question. So this talk is about my journey to find my own effective approach to address this really broad question. Yeah, so this is today's content. So I'd like to introduce both about myself and my research interests through this presentation according to these 6 topics. Yeah, so I'm really new here, so I want to start with self-introduction. Yes, my name is Sawako, pronouns are she or her, but then they or them. And I'm from Japan, and I just arrived here last month, and I started my PGR this September. And I grew up in Japan, and I was educated in Japan. And since last year, I was a PhD student at the University of Tokyo. And my major is sociology of health and illness, sociology of science, and sociology of partially education. And one of my supervisors are Ginny. And let's start talking about my research. And background is autism is said that it's diagnosed worldwide, as the image on the right side says. This is just image, but autism is diagnosed worldwide. But at the same time, some scholars said autism has emerged in really specific culture and historical contexts, and it's already investigated about in the US and the UK from these scholars, Eel and his colleagues, and Bonnie Evans. So if autism has really cultural thing, so how did autism has traveled from some specific country to another country beyond borders? And my more specific research interest is about my country. So how did it come to my country? So of course, some scholars already have addressed to this question. So let me talk about this. Maybe the most famous explanation is, as the previous presentation mentioned, medicalization theory. It is, it's briefly defined. Non-medical problems being defined and treated as medical issues. And mainly medicalization research has focused on one country, but Conrad and Berge suggested to pay more attention to the recent trend that medicalization occurs across borders and becoming more and more globalizing. And they offers a case study about ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And they identified 5 drivers that make ADHD more global. And these are the five factors. And the international pharmaceutical big companies and the influence of biologically oriented American psychiatry and the adoption of the internationally used diagnostic criteria such as DSM. And this DSM-related knowledge is available online on the internet, and it moves ADHD knowledge to more available for many people. And the final factor is the work of internationally related work of advocacy groups. They are really active. So overall, their model is these 5 factors are originated from America and other Western countries, and it has the power to be beyond borders. and moved to peripheral countries. But for this explanation, I have and other scholars have two kinds of doubts. And this is the first part. It's already mentioned by other scholars. And the second one is I will talk about by my diagrams, by my explanation. The first doubt is the globalization process is, in short, many more complex. And AO and his colleagues said the global spread of autism is not one way, so from Western to other country, not such a process, but the international co-production of broad network about autism and other developmental disabilities. Yeah, this is just quote. The global spread of the autism epidemic is conditioned on translating and aligning local interests formed in differing institutional metrics. Local actors do not imitate blindly. They do not become identical to core models like American models. They strategically attach themselves to the network by various means, and they have done so from the moment this network began to from the really early moment. And Juncker is EO's student and EO's colleague, and says if the peripheral or global South country adopts a Western medical concept like autism, it doesn't mean the institutional isomorphism, so institutional same structure. Instead of approaching the global spread of disease categories as a process of imitation and imposition facilitated by the adoption of universal disease classifications and the hegemony of biomedical psychiatry, this author argues that the disease category itself should be conceptualized as part of a larger network of relations. And the recently published article, Slagborn and the colleagues address researchers ADHD in India. And in this article, they suggest to be beyond the dichotomy, universal versus local. And as a medical concept diffuses, it becomes like a Creole language, become a mixture of various cultural languages, and no such a dichotomy. ADHD and biological knowledge is global, and other knowledge is local. No such a thing. And I agree with these arguments. Peripheral countries are not passively westernized, and we need to analyze the way people in each country strategically utilize and transform the Western concept. Yeah, this is the first point. And before talking about the second doubt on medicalization explanation, I think it's a good timing to explain why Japan. Yeah, of course, I grew up in Japan, so it's really natural to be interested in Japan. But aside from this fact, I need to justify why Japan. And the aforementioned studies already analyzed autism in, for example, Turkey or ADHD in India, so-called non-Western countries. But what is the difference and what is the variable point of Japan? But I'm still thinking about how can I answer this question. But basic information about Japan would be helpful to think about this. Japan has a long history of autism, and the first case of autism in Japan was reported in 1952. And Japan is the only Western country with higher autism diagnostic rate since really early period, around 1980s or perhaps the late 1960s. And Japan is like a bat, so we can't identify whether it is Western or non-Western, just because the Armstrong Hall said, because this country is medically advanced and technologically advanced, but culturally quite different from Western countries. So, but what's the cultural different points in that context in the theme of autism? Actually, it's to be clarified through empirical investigation. But hypothetically, I can say the institutionalization of people with disability, it could be a key point of discussion. Japan is one of few exceptions that the institutionalization, which is people with disability live in residential facilities and separated from other so-called normal society. Yeah, of disabled people happened before the autism diagnostic rate rose. It's a different point from America. And probably, as AL said, the position of institutionalization in Japanese society was different. And this uniqueness and background might bring about a new insight to existing theories. But at the same time, I need to take the final bullet things into account. Because yeah, I am interested in Japan, but no Western countries are not just a tool to enhance an existing sociological theory, but at the same time, it was to be analyzed without any theoretical contribution if it's worth thinking about for local people. And yeah, the second thinking about the global medicalization explanation is my own doubt. And it's the starting point of my own research. So let me explain in the following slide. This diagram is complicated, so you don't have to understand, but this is the whole picture of supporting system for children with autism or autism-related disabilities in Japan. Autism-related disabilities are called in Japanese in a different name, but I think it's complex. So yeah, I will skip to explain about this name. But yeah, this is the whole picture. But in this whole picture, yeah, medical support is merely one component, really small component, because due to the fact autism is currently not curable by medical treatment. And the rest parts are, green part is educational support and the blue one is welfare support. And it's inseparably accompanied by medical care. So I think if I think about Japanese supporting system or Japanese medicine about autism, I need to take these whole picture into consideration, not just focus on medicalization or medical things. And so far in my master's course and after master's course during my working experience, I have studied the education system. I cannot see this sentence. System. Yes, maybe it says, yeah, how the Japanese education system has defined and treated children with autism and related developmental disabilities, how they incorporated the new concept. I conducted 3 historical document analysis, the discursive analysis. And yeah, I'm sorry, this is really wordy slide, but the past investigation was Japanese expert discourse to construct the category of, yeah, developmental disabilities. It's Japanese Hatatsu Shogai. It's what I mentioned as autism-related disabilities. Yeah, so this umbrella category to mention autism and the ASD and PDD and ADHD and learning difficulties is a common umbrella term to include these disabilities. Sorry, my laptop says they start some music. Yeah, but it's not similar as DSM's similar category, but defined by the Developmental Disability Support Law in 2004 in Japan. This category emerged to refer to children who have no existing medical disorders, but need special support in Japan's education system. The experts have claimed the existence of developmental disabilities in order to reform Japan's special education system with non-medical model of disability. So in this past point, I just want to say the medicalization of developmental disabilities or autism in Japan was entailed in the institutional reform of education system. And the second analysis was about experts' debate in a committee in the Ministry of Education in Japan for creating Japan's own educational definition of LD, learning difficulties, in 1990s. LD was defined as a biological disorder by the committee, but the experts had struggled to intake disability models into its definition. But actually it failed due to the capacity of Japanese education system. And in this context, the disability models means non-medical models of disability, and it was from the UK. So for Japanese experts, the disability models was the UK ideal model, and the deficit model or biological model was for Japanese people. It was from the US. And the third analysis was the administrative shifts to apply medical causation of autism as a brain dysfunction to Japan's education system. And the medical causation that autism is a brain dysfunction has been disregarded in an educational classification of disability in Japan because the medical causation was considered too early to apply to the system in the 70s. Instead, it was categorized as an emotional problem, emotional disturbance, along with selective mutism, delinquency, and other acquired childhood deviance. And in 2000s, when the education system was directed to individualized and medical or scientific-based one, autism was redefined as a biomedical disorder to ensure consistency with the medical causation. So through the previous research, I observed how actively and selectively Japanese educational experts use the international expertise to build Japan's own support system for autism. Yeah, and for further research, of course, I will focus on the rest part, the welfare system, as well as the medical history in Japan. And the methodology would be historical analysis, and I will collect oral history of Japanese welfare experts like governmental officials and support center owners and parents and researchers. And then in the last part, I would like to talk about potential impacts of my research. Maybe I need some comments or advice on this part. The academic impact of this study is to reveal the process of local embedding of ASD without simplifying it into Westernization or medicalization. And this study provides an opportunity to re-examine the role of psychiatric expertise in the current fluid and complex society. And for social impact, this study might inform accurate knowledge of the historical process of why Japanese people have ASD, for future improvement of local institutional designs and policies. Yeah, I'll end my presentation. This is my references. Thank you.